Well,
Um,
also what people need to know is because since we as humanity and the Earth is evolving right now into a higher frequency vibrational state
yes,
density,
yes, yes,
that gives the opportunity
yes.
for negative entities to transmute to positive.
Hmm. Hmm.
They take the opportunity in transitional times because all negativity, every negative thought entity being, however you want to look at it, ultimately must transmute back to positivity because they're part of source.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all negative things will become positive sometime in the sixth density.
Hmm. Hmm. Beautiful. This is corroborating for me because I felt like, who was I speaking to? Maybe Daryl James recently. And I said, the Draco came up and I said, I actually feel psychically that they have an opportunity to up level. They don't have
Yes.
to continue playing this role. So we have to figuratively, metaphorically, spiritually give them that space, that possibility to evolve. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Starseed Speak. I am honored to have with me today Chris O'Connor, fellow SSP. I want to say survivor. I think in your case, it was a soul plan that you had this all dialed out in and mapped out before you came in. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm really happy. Thank you so much for asking me.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the first time we've spoken, and there's so many things I want to get into, and easy enough to dive into your bio. I'll just kind of for people in the audience who maybe are not familiar with Chris's story, it goes way back, I think, to the soul plan. Born in '68, in this incarnation, you chose to incarnate through your parents because maybe you felt clearly you felt that through them you could more easily find your way into being taken into the SSP. So at 2 years old, which is so remarkable. There you would recall many of your memories of who you were and why you were incarnated on Earth, and also coming in to assist the Confederation of Planets, an organization with whom you have been closely working for many years. Yeah, assisting with disclosure, the ascension of humanity, and working with many alien species throughout the solar system and galaxy as a representative of Earth through the UN and the US-based SSP. So I will leave that there for a moment. So what people will find striking right off the bat, I think, is that, you were taken at age 2, right? So could we jump off there? I mean, that's like you came in and you raised your hand and you knew this was going to happen. Um, there's so much to your story. So tell us about what happened when you were 2 years old and way back.
Okay. Um, you're right. I knew prior to incarnating, I knew the plan. In fact, it was my bright idea. And so we met with, I don't know their names, but I know their faces, with somebody from the US military. I don't know if it was Navy or Air Force. It could have been either one. Um, but anyway, we met and we made a plan. So that was prior to my incarnating, which I don't know how much time was between the two. It couldn't have been much. But I went ahead and incarnated in 1968, was born to my parents. And the plan was that they were going to take me, they being the military,
Yeah.
take me at a young age. And they did at 2 years old in 1970. And and I can quickly tell you what I remember of the moment. Um,
Yes. Yeah, please.
I was standing up, I was in my crib, just standing there, looking out the door of the little, it was like a small bedroom off of the living room, and I could see the television and people sitting in there, and I could hear people talking. So I'm standing there, kind of, holding on to the little bars and
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
over, kind of thing. And then suddenly, there was a Sorry, there's a deer outside the window. It just caught my attention. Um, there was like a little bit of a flash, and then there was this man standing in front of me suddenly, I mean, like within just a few inches, just standing there, and he promptly reached down and picked me up.
Mm, hmm.
And it was pretty quick, so I didn't really have a reaction.
Yeah,
Uh, and so immediately we were not there anymore.
yeah.
We were somewhere else, and we were like it's like a hallway kind of a thing. There was nothing to remember, and I was two, so I
Yeah.
just remember flashes of walking down a hallway and going through a door, and then I was handed over to a woman in like a lab type of situation. And so she takes me, and I don't know why. I guess it was traumatic. So I do remember a lot of these next few moments.
Yeah.
Um, so she took me and she undressed me. I didn't have much on. I may have only had a diaper. I don't remember what.
Yeah.
I remember her wiping me down, so like a wet nap sort of thing.
Mm,
And I found out later that was like an antibacterial sort of thing
mm.
to get off the skin, like before surgery.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So then she took me over to this. It was like from what I recall, it's just like a tube, like an acrylic tube,
Mhm.
not much bigger than my body was.
Wow, I just flashed on this thing that's quite, petite. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and at two, I'm not tiny, but
You're
not
little.
big
You're
either.
little. Yeah. Yeah.
So after she does the wipe down, she sets me up into this tank, and inside this tank, because it was like so like the tube that was horizontal, and on the top was a cutout, so
Yeah.
you could set something inside of this,
Yeah.
and there were all these little black rubber pieces, and part of my memory are from later on when I was told what happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so in that tank was like I don't know, half full or something of this pink
It's
gelatinous
gel. It's gel.
gel. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not like Jello, not that thick. It's just
Yeah.
like a gravy or something, but
Hmm. Hmm.
gravy.
Hmm.
It was pink lavendery color, and it was pretty interesting because I found out later that is a biological gel that they grow for the individual that's going to be in it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it becomes simpatico with your biology. Is
Correct.
that right? Okay.
Correct.
Hmm.
So what that is, it's a advanced growth gel,
Oh, so they're going to accelerate you.
accelerate growth. So
Wow.
what in order to do that, what they had to do, place me in, and then she was kind of pushing me down, so her hand was pretty big on my
Yeah.
torso,
Yeah.
pushed me under,
Mm.
uh, under the surface of the gel, and then pushed me to the bottom of the tank, and then compressed my chest,
Oh, wow.
get the air out,
Yeah.
which made me, breathe in.
Hmm.
I got all this gel, and I was like, I remember the feeling of panic, and I was just trying to breathe.
Yeah.
Turns out that it's after a few seconds, it was okay. I remember calming down.
Wow.
So then there I'm in this gel, and in order to grow the body um, at an exponential rate that's the same internally and externally,
Mm.
they have to get that gel into certain organs of the body and certain places within the body and in the joints and places
Wow.
like
Okay.
that. The next step was, well, first what they had to do, because that process was kind of dirty, if you know what I mean,
Hmm.
compressing everything out of me.
Hmm.
Flush that out, then they put
Hmm.
new gel. And so now they put in, there's those little black, it's like rubber things all throughout around the
Hmm.
tank.
Mm.
They put needles in. So now they're injecting into my brain
Oh,
different ways.
Wow.
and connecting into all the organs and the joints and stuff like that. So I'm suspended in this tank by needles, big fat ones.
Oh, and I'm just thinking, Chris, about your poor 2-year-old self. Like, I know you signed up for this, but wow, that's a lot for a little guy to handle.
Oh,
Like, I don't know what's happening. I mean, at the soul level, I know what's happening, but I don't know what's happening.
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
We
And
we
you have such a recall on this as well. The detail that you have is really quite something.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, I've spent a lot of time, years with
yeah,
it. You
yeah.
know, I remembered this my whole life.
You
So
did. Okay. Okay. Because that's one of my questions. Like, so how did the memories start coming back for you with all of this?
yeah, well, it's just a matter of a process. Some of them have always been with me, and
Yeah.
others, they were fragmented, or it was an emotion in response to something I knew, and then I had to kind of figure out how are these connected.
Yeah.
But a
Yeah.
lot of it was in meditation,
Yep.
silencing the analytical mind and allow.
100%. It's my process as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so things come in, and then the things I remembered, but I didn't have a context for, then other memories would come in, and now I have a context for it. So I could kind of put it together over a number of years into
Yes. Yeah.
more comprehensive, like an actual
Yeah.
story that, I can tell people that they can understand.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
But there's a lot of those little type of things in there, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
and so that's how it started. And then over, I don't know, I don't have a memory of how long it took. They had to transfer me into a bigger tank after I settled in, and then that was the tank I was kind of finished off in. But
Yeah.
it took like 4 or 5 weeks to grow me
Yeah.
to like mid
Yeah.
20.
Wow, far out. So from two to your mid 20s would be a little bit shocking if you were conscious of what was happening, right? In accelerated growth. So, and do you have a sense of where you were during this age progression?
I
Um,
really don't. I remember what things looked like.
yeah, fair
I
enough.
was,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't,
I've been so many places underground where I'm like, I think I know where this is, but I'm not sure.
well, yeah, it depends. I always kind of went by the color.
Mm.
This place was like white and gray.
Hmm.
Other places I've been were like this mint green,
Hmm.
like this light kind of a minty green color. I mean, so that's the only thing I can go on is just visual.
Yeah, yeah. So where do you end up now with you're in your 20s and you're out there somewhere? Is that what's the memory progression from the tank where they're progressing you to
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because obviously now I'm a 20-some-year-old physical form with the 2-year-old brain, which is not a whole lot going on in there. All
Yeah.
I know is just it's emotional, it's traumatic. When they pulled me out, I don't remember the process, but I do remember just being curled up in the fetal position for a day or two, just crying like a little
Oh,
tiny.
yeah. Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
what's going on. Like apparently they have to let your body act once you're out, you have to acclimate and you have to get, your brain in,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
then
Hmm. Hmm.
then they have a process of unlocking the memories. Uh,
Okay.
they did that, and then I remembered that, everything I needed to remember about my agreeing to do this and the process.
Well,
And then I basically got to work, you know.
yeah. Yeah, so wow. And so when you said retrieving memory that you remembered why at the soul level you were here, is that what you meant? Like, oh, I remember I'm here doing a job.
Yeah,
Is
that I agreed to do this, that I,
yeah, it's so
yeah.
okay.
And then I had a job to do, and the first 20 years was going to be working directly for the military complex,
Okay.
which I did. And I worked on Earth mostly,
Uh-huh.
and it's underground, DOMS. Uh,
Okay.
Also some other places that I'm not sure where they were.
Yeah, yeah. So I know. Yeah, I always tell people with the DOMs, it's like there's not like a neon sign that says, here you are at XYZ, whatever base it is. Like, just a couple. We'll go into that 21st 20 years of Earth-based experience, but I just wanted to ask you, 60, was it 6 years in total, Chris, that you spent?
Yes,
That's
yes,
like
320
so
years.
remarkable. And do you have I think this was all under the umbrella of the Confederation of Planets. Was that sort of
Yes.
your like your organization, if you like?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And is this, do you like resonate with a particular, star family or it doesn't, sometimes we have a particular, like I have a Syrian affiliation among others, but I don't know if that's something you relate with or can you say anything?
Well, up until very recently, like within the last month, I was always kind of blocked about who I was.
Mm, mm,
I
mm.
had an experience 3, 4 weeks ago
Oh.
in the hospital. And through that process, my guides took me out of my body a couple of times. And we kind of did some exploration and they took me around and they reminded me who I was. I don't know the name of the race. I just know that we manufacture suns
Yeah.
to start solar systems.
Wow. That's huge. And I want to say just a plug on this, like so many of us we get landlocked in 3D and we want names for everything. And that's part of our um kind of our complex or our limitation here in 3D.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like we know the feeling and the resonance of it, and that loving energy is what I lock onto when I'm
And
relating
many
to
of them don't
it.
have names.
Yeah, they don't have names like
Awesome.
Chris and Rebecca. They have like symbols or
Yeah.
I recognize signatures of light, like you said with your memory, like, oh, it was like gray and white, or if it was kind of greenish or anyway.
Yeah, and at a certain level, it's all mind speak, telepathic. It's just
Yes.
like you know everything you need to know instantly about that person. You don't need to know their name, you
Yeah.
know.
Um, I had somebody's going to ask this, so I'm going to say it's a little aside from the SSP stuff, but was there a particular thing that catalyzed this experience with the Soul family or the Star family? Was there anything? Because people are going to say, well, how can I do that? Like, was there anything in particular? I think it probably just came in because you were ready to know at that point, but anything there?
Well, I've incarnated on Earth quite a number of times,
Mhm.
and I've always been interested in. See, the thing about Earth is it's well known throughout at least the galaxy that if you want to evolve your soul very quickly, go to Earth and incarnate.
Well, well said.
It's a tough
Yeah.
place to be. We don't even recognize how difficult it is compared to other planets.
Yeah.
But it's well known for being quite difficult because of the polarities are
Very.
so opposing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that can be real. But there's real danger, and this is part of why I decided to start sharing my story
Mm.
with people. Is that there's a real danger when you come here and you incarnate and you go, especially when you're in a society that tells you you're wrong about these things you remember or what you believe.
Yeah.
Then you start if you start buying into that and not being true to your own heart and what you know to be true,
Yeah.
you can get lost and stuck in the earth incarnation cycle, which many people have.
Right.
And they're going to remain and they're going to continue incarnating life after life until they remember who they are.
Yeah. Wow. That's a spin cycle for sure. Like the spin cycle of, chronic amnesia.
Yeah.
So thanks for speaking to that. I mean, I love these spiritual topics along with, kind of spliced in with all the SSP stories. So one other thing, I don't think you went through any trauma-based mind control, like a lot of us, myself included. That was not part of your gig, or what happened in the military. Can you say anything to that? Um,
Most of it, honestly, I don't remember.
okay. Yeah.
I there are things that I do recall. And in fact, again, in that experience in the hospital when I was being taken out of my body, um, ended up having to have a surgery, and it was on my left foot. And it turns out that I've been having a problem there for about 2 years. And
Mhm.
now in the hospital, guidance told me what the problem was. And for some reason, my brain's going blank on what it's called. But there was a transplant, not a transplant, not a transmitter,
Implant?
implant. Oh,
An
how
implant?
can I-
So,
there was an implant, and it was connected to interdimensional AI.
oh my
And
God. Okay. Yeah.
and so the surgeon comes to me and he goes, "Chris, you're an unusual person." I said, "Well, you got that right, you know."
Right.
He says there's a void in your foot. We can see it in the CAT scan. We can
Wow.
see it in, we can see that. And there's a void. And I'm like, well, oh, okay, well, what causes that? And he's like, I don't know. I says, well, what is it? He goes, well, I don't know. I've never seen it. I said, but there's a void. So before surgery, this little thing about the size of a lentil comes out of that small, it was a small wound,
Hmm.
comes out of my foot. And I don't think anything of it. I just think it's unusual and weird, but I just
Yes.
discard it.
Yeah.
And so then I was speaking with guidance, laying
Hmm.
there in bed that night, and they said that void in third density is a void. But in the upper densities where this uh, interdimensional AI is, it's an actual physical thing. So that's
Mm.
what came out of your foot today, and that's what you've been dealing with is this, it creates a portal in your body.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty weird,
Yeah.
obviously. I
Yeah.
certainly don't
Yeah.
want to think about having had an implant, but if it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
and I believe it probably was true because there's a lot of things that have shifted in my mind and in my heart and everything since then. And
Mm.
since then, guidance has been talking with me about a lot of humans are connected to the AI
Yeah.
through portals someplace in their body through an implant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that they're because as we move up vibrationally into a higher, into a more fourth density
Yeah.
experience, higher vibration, those cords and that are connected to us are breaking off, and that we're disconnecting from that interdimensional AI. And I think that's amazing.
Well, yeah. So more and more people. I mean, I'm glad you shared this, that this came up because it might really help somebody in the audience.
Yeah,
And is that connected to black goo in your mind?
they are connected. In fact, I also had black goo, but I got rid of that several years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you have that experience and you expel that from your body, there is no question what's happening
Okay. Yeah.
whatsoever. So those are both gone now. The implant's gone, and I'm disconnected, and I feel great.
Wow. Remarkable. Wow. That was quite a thread. And can you give a little bite for folks who might not know what black goo is, like in your understanding? I know
Right.
it's multidimensional in nature. That's what we're speaking to here. But I mean, it
Yeah.
has its own intelligence in a way, intelligence being a loose, limited.
Artificial,
Yeah.
a kind of self-survival type of understanding. The black goo is usually injected into people that have some experience or that uh, other dimensional beings that are not our friends want to keep track of you or want to use in certain ways. So you can look at it like an interdimensional microbot.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's basically if you get so many of them together, then they create this looks very much like crude oil, petroleum.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and it's in your body, but when it becomes physical in your body, so when you raise your vibration and their little signals are jangled by your higher frequency now, they can no longer be interdimensional and they come into this dimension fully. And then when
Right.
you come into this
Yeah.
dimension fully, your body expels it.
And that's all a huge plug for expanding one's consciousness through meditation and other means. Get the
Yes.
black goo and the implants out. Humanity ascends. Okay, there's our recipe for 2025. Thank you, Chris O'Connor. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. And
And
this
don't
was
just
in the
let me
past
on
couple
that.
years, yeah?
So
Just pretty recent. Like the foot thing is recent, and then the black goo was a couple years ago.
it was a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just before the DEEMS, came into being for me, before all
Yeah.
these came in. So I had to be cleared out.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because the black goo will only, like, if you're at a high vibrational state, again, I hear you saying this, like it can't survive in that type of host.
No,
So
no. So
very.
but I was really working like meditating twice a day then,
Mhm.
doing different things to bring my frequency up and my vibration up
Yeah.
and so that it just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And
Well done.
yeah,
Well done. So we could jump on back to your first 20, unless there's more you want to add on these themes Okay. So do you have a sense of were you being actually trained to eventually go to Saturn during that time, or tell us about what was happening?
Yeah, I'm kind of writing all this down right now to share with people. But I could quickly say that there was one time I was at some base in the desert somewhere. I don't know where.
Yeah.
All I know is it was a tiny base. It had 4 or 5 little buildings, and I was a guard. That's all I was doing. I was guarding and I was escorting um, young people to and from the different buildings, and it was just walking distance. It was just all right close to one another. So I did things like that, but I also went through training later for memory extraction and memory retrieval and memory deletion, soul transference,
Okay.
or like,
Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty big because I think I spent some time listening to your interviews with James Rink in the past days here, and one of the things I feel you mentioned, am I right, that there was like a silver tube that was something to do with transfer of consciousness? Um,
yeah, it looks like it's dark now. The sun's going down. Well, here, let me
mhm.
get it for you.
Yeah, please, will you show us?
Yeah, it's they look exactly like this.
Oh, the Deems. It looks like
Deems.
the Deems.
This
Okay.
this is what they are. What they were. My Deems does something totally different. Um, theirs is electronic, so there's buttons on them. And if they want to transfer your energy, they just or your memory, or they want to delete your memory, or they want to transfer your consciousness to another body, but it has to be an exact copy of you because you have a different other, you have to, it has to match your pineal gland frequency.
Mm.
Um, then they used their version of this. And this is one of the things I used on a daily basis for the SSP because we had to delete blocks of memory from super soldiers. And sometimes they're begging you to take out the memory because it's too horrific.
Yes.
Other
Yeah.
times they're begging you not to take it out, but you don't have a choice. You got to do
So
it.
that's a tough position to be in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
Oh, I remember the emotion of it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It was
that's
heartbreaking.
yeah, that's very what I would say is emotionally complex. So that was is this under the auspices of the Navy, Air Force, AETs, or do you what's
Well,
who's
it's definitely the Navy and or Air Force because they at that level, what I recall is I just see uniforms. I see people. I remember their faces and their uniforms, and they all kind of look the same.
Mhm.
Some variation of dark blue and light blue, and never white. It was always dark colors or gray,
Mhm.
black,
Mhm. Mhm.
and like black belts, black boots, that type of thing. So it was never really beyond those colors. So you could never really quite tell if you're looking back who's who.
Yeah, yeah. Um, were let's see. Were some of these beings clones that you were transferring consciousness then into? Is that, do you
Well, I like to call them copies
know?
because they're exact copies of the same person.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, maybe that's the definition of clone. It's just that we hear clone. That is a fallout of also people cloning people and putting different
Yeah,
consciouses
yeah,
in and they're not. It's not a positive thing.
yeah.
And so they're changing that body form with the new consciousness. And so and that can also sometimes not be fully biological, a clone.
Yes, yes, yes,
Where
yes.
if it's a copy, it's fully biological and
Mm.
it's an exact copy of that individual, maybe different age, but it's an
Yeah.
exact.
And you came back in a copy of yourself at 2 years old. Is that right? From all this the 60 years, did you come back as a copy?
This is my fourth body
Okay.
since I was born
Wow.
because I was born into the one I was born into.
Yeah.
It took that body, age advanced it. I was in uh, in service for 20 years, a little more, and I was killed.
Hmm.
So then they transferred my consciousness and memories and everything into a copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 20 years later, I was transferred again. That was more of a vanity thing, to be honest.
I think I heard you say that when you were talking to James. Like I
Yeah,
just
it was
thinking
more of a
back about the
vanity thing.
25-year-old
Kind
body,
of ashamed of it, but
right?
who wouldn't want to go from
Who
45 to
wouldn't like I'm
25?
in
It's like,
50 something now and like, yeah, sure, make me 25. It's great. I feel really good.
let's do this.
Yeah.
I might say yes again if I could, but there's no options there now. But then at the end of that final 20 years, the 60 years, when they were going to return me back to 1970, which yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but it's actually when you understand the science of it, it's not hard to move
It
through,
isn't. It's
not at
not.
all.
No.
So then they had a clone of a 2-year-old.
Mhm.
I, I just said the word clone. They had a copy clone of me.
Yeah.
I was 2 years old, and that's who they returned
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
1970, and that's this body.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I reckon, just to acknowledge, I know it's really hard to speak of these things in kind of dialed down linear 3D English terms
Mhm.
because that we're talking quantum. We're speaking quantumly, and then we're kind of trying to stick this, square peg in a circular hole or something. It's clunky, right? Just
It
to,
is.
just to say that, I get it.
Yeah.
And then were you in connection? At what point are you realizing in all this that your connection, that you have this connection with the Confederation of Planets? Was that something you recognized throughout or all along? Or
On a limited level, I don't remember fully.
Mhm.
On a limited level, I remembered I had agreed to do this. As soon as I came out of and was grown, and they unlocked my memories.
Yeah.
I remember I agreed to do it, and I remembered I had agreed to do it with my guidance, and in that also my soul family, and that also was connected to Confederation of Planets. Now I didn't have a name for them right away,
Mm.
but later on, and then when I went after the first 20 years, I was transferred from Earth to the moon, what we know as the moon of Mimas, the first moon outside the rings of Saturn, which is actually a space station, and there
Okay.
are many,
Wow.
many thousands of entities living there. Although we can't see it in third density the way that they see it in higher densities.
Wow. So, wow. Okay. So you were kind of doing different. Would you say you were being trained or groomed in a way or something for this position later on for that first 20, like you mentioned, being a guard and working with transferring consciousness, and then this sounds like a really different endeavor in the second tour of duty or the second 20
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Now, the second and third 20 years is really what my goal was. The first 20 years was payment.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
gave the government payment of 20 years if they would basically be the ones that sponsored me, took me to Mimas, and I was under the auspice of Earth, um, sort of like Earth Embassy,
Yep.
you know, sort
Yeah.
of like United Nations, but not exactly.
Uh-huh.
But it's funny because I know there's so much corruption here on Earth, but some of those same people you take off the Earth and put in a space station or in a ship, all those problems are gone.
Isn't that interesting? Like the vibration shifts and everything is like
Everything is different.
everything is up here. It's not.
Everybody gets along.
Mhm.
We're talking Earth humans.
Right.
You
Yeah.
get along with every other Earth human, first of all, because you have a compatico, right? You're from the same place, and it
Yeah.
can be kind of scary to be out there, and you're kind of gathered together.
Yeah,
So
here
the
we are on the moon of Saturn just doing our thing. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on. Um,
yeah,
And this is quite an esteemed position in a way. I'm thinking of myself as sort of a super soldier slave back in the day on Mars and beyond, and like I didn't have any privilege to go anywhere doing any kind of negotiations at all ever. And you were functioning as a telepath to gather information, intel, like to understand the meeting and deliver it back to Earthlings who mostly spoke human and didn't have telepathy. Yeah, your
mhm.
superiors. Is that correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. That was my primary thing. Yeah,
Mm.
I would be in meetings, and I would have to, especially empathetically, also. connecting with other entities to see how they're emotionally doing. Because if they're like, because a lot of them you cannot tell
Yeah.
what they're thinking and what their emotions are. But
Yeah.
to be in that meeting, everybody in the room has to agree that this person, whether it's me or someone else, because there were others of me,
Yeah.
um, we're going to be monitoring on a telepathic and empathy level
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
report back. That's because they understood that we as humans in our human brain are limited because we haven't been raised to know the true power of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well
So
said.
we're limited, and I was like a gateway between them. Here's a downside. Something I would love people to know about all these other races are the vast majority of them, most of them are very loving and they're full of joy. And it's in a love and a joy that we don't experience on Earth very often.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have a newborn child, you might
Mm.
begin to understand, somebody that you love with every fiber of your being, you begin to understand that love. Now, part of that love and joy, that vibration of love to keep the frequency high, they're they tell jokes to bring laughter
Mm.
and then brings joy, and that's the frequency you got to raise, right?
Yeah.
So I would be sitting there if I knew them well, knew the other person across, the table, not a human, but another being, they would tell me jokes, try to get me break in front of my superiors.
Oh,
And I'd be like, stop it. And I'd be trying to concentrate. I'm trying to do my job and they're telling me they're terrible, like bad dad jokes.
oh,
You know, um, I can't even remember them. People ask,
right.
I
Right. But
try to
they're trying to
remember
undo
them,
you, right? So, well,
like,
so,
stop it.
so I have so many questions right here. So, and what are the beings like? Do you have much recall in the different races or,
I remember dozens of other races.
so many, so many.
Yeah. And a couple of years ago, I started trying to draw them out, do paintings of them.
Yeah.
And, I only gotten a few done. But yeah, I remember some that, um, one in particular, his name is Jigadem. He and I remained friends for many years on Mimas because
Wow.
he was this counterpart for his race that I was for Earth humans. Um, and
Okay.
so,
Oh, so you were both fulfilling the same kind of function.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so there's several of those. That's why I remember those folks,
Yeah.
uh, because there's some intentional thing. And some of them actually want all of humanity on Earth to know they exist.
Yeah.
They don't like that we're not told the truth.
Yeah.
They don't like it at all,
Mhm.
but they also know it's not their choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have allowed those people that run the earth, whomever they may be, you and I have allowed them to do this for good or for the bad.
Yeah.
We've allowed it. And because we've allowed it, it's our free will. They're not going to come in and change it. We have to change it.
Right. With totally 100%. So, wow. I mean, and this is such a golden opportunity. Like you're having this, you're able to interact with all these races and understand what's happening. And what was the context of the meetings, the negotiations going on am I right that this is a question within a question that's an aside, but 140 something moons, Saturn, is that correct? There's tons of moons. 100, the
Oh,
number I
I
looked
don't,
up was 146 moons.
there's a lot.
There's
There's a
this,
lot.
isn't that crazy? Anyway, that's another just a factoid there, if we believe whatever we get on the internet. But what a journey through all this. That's remarkable. So I interrupted you about the negotiations and the context of that.
Well, the context of the majority of them were problem solving or trade or negotiating a contract,
Mhm.
those type of things. A lot of them, unfortunately, were apologizing,
Mm,
because there's a lot of Earth humans, and I say Earth humans because there are other humans on other planets that are not exactly Earth humans, but they look identical to us,
mhm.
not from Earth. So a lot of other Earth humans have also left the planet, and they're not. necessarily good guys, and they go do bad things. And how this is also very important for people to understand why we have to be of accepting and understanding of other people and loving toward them and not judging them, is because Earth humans, even if they've left the planet 50, 80 years ago, and they've been going around doing bad things, all the other races see them as Earth humans, and so Earth humans are responsible for them because
Mhm.
we are literally responsible for the actions of every other Earth human, whether they're on the planet or not.
Mhm.
And so we would have to go in there because they would come to the embassy, the Earth embassy, and they'd sit down and they would air their grievances. In fact, that's how I got killed the first time. Well, I only got
Yeah.
killed once.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
in a negotiation, and it was because I don't know if I call them the Dark Fleet or what, but this negative group of Earth humans went to
Mm.
this planet and wanted, I think it was quartz or some type of crystal, I believe. But they wanted it super cheap,
Mm.
or they
Mm.
wanted to trade something that these other beings didn't want to trade. These other beings are part of the Confederation of Planets. And so they knew, that they were the bad ones, and they didn't really want to deal with them. They didn't want to create problems for the good part of Earth humans. So they rejected them and they said, we don't want to trade with you. And so they got really angry. They attacked them, killed about 300,000 of them, and took what they
Oh.
wanted.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So there's some repercussions of that for sure. I could see why you'd be kind of trying
Yeah.
to equilibrate that situation.
Yeah. So there we are. They came to the Earth Embassy, and there's three of us sitting in a row along a board table, and there's three, maybe four of them across from me. So I'm sitting face to face with their primary representative, and he's probably 4 feet away, maybe five. And so he's sitting there, and these entities, they're sort of like Vulcans in that they don't really show emotion. They work to suppress their emotions. But when they get angry or they get super happy, they do it really quickly and it's extreme.
Yeah, it's like 0 to 100 in like a millisecond. I've
Second.
seen
Yeah.
this. I've totally seen this. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're sitting there, and I can tell they're trying not to be emotional, but their speaker is not doing well. And so I turn to my superior and I say, you need to understand that he feels like you're not understanding their loss. He's not thinking you're connecting to the horrific thing that just happened.
Right. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
wasn't. He
Yeah.
wasn't. I
Mhm.
mean, he wasn't being unkind, but he wasn't
Yeah.
giving them
There was no
support.
empathy. I hear
There
you
was
say
no
like there's
empathy.
no empathy. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so then he says something else, and then I can feel from him he's about to lose it. And suddenly he didn't have a shirt on. He's what we call the gray, but they're quite tall.
Mhm.
And they're not like the grays that
The
we
greatest.
all
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
There are many species of gray.
Yeah.
Um, and they have big triangular heads.
I thought I was getting the psychic image of a guy with a triangle head. So
I
thank
actually
you.
have a drawing I can show you.
Oh, do
And
you have it? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'll show you the picture first so you get a better picture.
Yeah.
Um, okay, where is he? Oh, here he is. Okay, so that's what he looks like.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Um,
Not a lot of facial feature.
well, they do have facial features. He asked me as a courtesy, please don't draw my face.
Yeah, so blur pixelate it, leave it for
Yeah,
protecting his identity.
and it's because the way their faces have a really thick jaw. If he's doing this, a
Hmm.
really thick jaw, and then their eyes and the way everything looks, it looks like they're scowling at you, and it's kind of a frightening look.
Okay.
And he didn't want to scare people. He said, "You can draw the rest, but please don't draw my face." I'm like, "Okay."
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So that being was sitting right across from me, and he had some sort of fabric that came over his shoulder, but his chest was bare. And I'm sitting there across from him. He got really upset instantly, and he put his hand across his chest like this, just swiped it across. And then where like our heart would be,
Mm,
this green beam of light came out,
mm,
shot across the table and hit me right here.
mm,
So
mhm.
I was hit, I was knocked back out of a chair. It was like a swivel chair, I recall, and knocked back on the floor, and I died.
Wow.
So, but he intended to kill all three of us,
Mm,
he
mhm,
said later. But the second he hit me, he realized he lost it. He didn't want to do that. He was representing his people, and he just decided to stop. He felt instantly felt bad about it.
mhm.
Because the reason we were talking to them to begin with is because they were going to come to Earth and exact some form of revenge. Because they felt not that they were being just emotional about it, but they're like, no, this is just.
Yeah.
Killed
Yeah.
300,000 of us, and then we're going to go kill 300,000 Earth humans. It's just.
Okay. Okay.
And so it was an intense.
That is very intense. Very,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And as a side note, I've actually found my superior that was sitting next to me. He contacted me and he wrote out an email giving me details I had never even spoken out loud.
Wow. So like in real time here on Earth, he connected through
Yeah,
you. Oh my gosh.
he lives in France.
Wow.
And so he describes it to me and he said, "Yeah, but do you remember the process of when we were taking you out and then 2 days later I came in the room and gave you the good news because I was actually I've skipped a bit, but
Fair enough.
once
Yeah. Yeah.
once I was killed, I was like 45-ish at that time. And they were keeping like a 25-ish year old. They kind of keep those for
Yeah.
emergencies, another
Yeah.
body.
Yep.
And we're in the Earth Embassy, so our infirmary is there, and the storage of these copies are there. And so they rushed me to the infirmary and they transferred my consciousness into the copy. And it takes a couple of days for the nervous system to come in online, really.
Yeah.
It's like your nervous system's fighting you, and now your consciousness is it's the same frequency of a body, but a new body. So your consciousness and nervous system and all kind of have to come into sync.
Yeah.
And so it takes a couple of days. So it's like you have the flu for a couple of days. So
Mhm.
after about 2 days, he comes in my room. He sits down at the foot of my bed and says, "Well, you know, he's a very matter of fact kind of person. It turned out for the best, because as soon as they killed you, they felt really bad and they
Yep.
saw they had done was something similar to what the Earth,
So then it was all balanced.
and it
You're
was all
like, okay,
balanced.
we sorted it out. This is good. You gave us one
Yeah,
of yours, or we took
yeah.
it.
So we're like, okay, and so it worked out. And I was like, well, good for the good.
Great. Well, um, so did you then go back and finish? Was that the end of that 20 years then for you? Did you
No, it was the
still?
beginning of the second 20 years on Mimas. It's within the first year.
Okay. Oh,
I
okay.
was still
Okay.
there for 40 years.
So you're still gonna be out there for a long time, and they're replacing you with a copy, a clone, whatever we decide we're going to
Yeah.
call this. So wow. And um, I was struck by something you said. And I think this is really important because it's hinting at the frequency of 4D and above, in which we have a shared consciousness, and if I do something or you do something, we all kind of bear that burden.
Mhm.
Alternately, as I have a mother and father from the Crow people in previous life that have helped me heal. And mother always says, whatever happens to one happens to all. So we're all
Mhm.
carrying the wounds and also the responsibility of how we've, chosen in the earth realm and throughout the different the whole array of different races. I think you're saying that that might be the norm is that, we're all responsible.
Equally.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if we blow up our planet, if we destroy our planet, we're all responsible 100%.
I
Each one
think,
of us.
yeah, thank you. I think that's such a really remarkable, like kind of a 180 perspective, shift, really, like, oh, well, that changes how we move, how we behave, how we choose to be with one another when we kind of okay, extrapolate a little bit if we're operating from that worldview versus really service to self and survival kind of mode, fear. So
Yeah.
anyway, a little riff on that. I really that's something to sit with, when we consider the repercussions of that. And that I hear you saying too is a repercussion or the point of you being out there was to do these negotiations, to keep things smoothly running diplomatically within the scheme of trade and so on. Is that,
Mhm.
yeah. So, and is this then under the auspices of United Nations here on Earth somewhat?
I honestly don't know how they're connected. I know
Okay.
being there, it was a whole different
Hmm.
organization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if and how they're connected.
Was your point of contact still Navy or Air Force, or do you know that? Or
I still don't remember.
that's okay. I'm asking. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would, you gave me a thought. I should actually ask that gentleman that was my superior if he remembers what branch he was in, because then
Mhm.
I would kind of help guide me because I remember what he was wearing.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember any? So, let me get my question out. So, how often were these negotiations taking place on
Well,
Nemus?
that's difficult for me to recall, and the reason being is
Hmm.
when you are, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a telepath for that they use, you're a tool.
Hmm.
Uh, and when you're traveling and when you're not being used in that way, and there's no foresight in the very near future that you're going to be used, you're put into stasis. I
Okay.
was
Yeah,
stasis. And
yeah.
the reason for that is because then your thoughts are no longer available to be taken by others who are more powerful.
Right. So if you have intel, like Chris is shut down, he's
They
not,
can't access.
can't have anything from the memory well or the stream of info there. Okay, that makes sense. So do you recall anything about the base there or the place at which you were all meeting or ships or any kind of visuals from any of that?
I see very clearly
Yeah,
the
yeah,
space station.
yeah.
Uh, it was very beautiful, huge.
Hmm.
I
Huge. I
mean,
feel it's huge. Like I could just have
it
this.
is
Yeah, yeah.
huge. And here's an interesting ironic, which isn't really ironic,
Mm.
not a coincidence. The moon of Mimas was discovered, well, originally in the 17 something by William Herschel or something. But the first photograph of it was, what was it, Cassini or
Oh,
Voyager?
oh,
Voyager in
oh,
1973.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's the first photograph.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
Star Wars came out, I think 1970, right? Somewhere
yes,
around there.
77. Yeah, yeah,
And the Death Star in Star Wars looks
yeah.
exactly like Mimas.
Oh,
But there were no photographs of Mimas
oh.
when the Death Star was designed and put into the movie. That
Hmm.
was that was soft disclosure. That was guidance. That was the Confederation putting information into our society so that
Hmm.
they would recognize it later and know
Hmm.
that that wasn't a coincidence.
Hmm.
So, uh, so there's this huge crater on Mimas that it's called the Herschel crater, that looks just like that dish on the Death Star.
Oh,
Referred to, NASA often calls it the Death Star moon.
oh, okay. This is so interesting, right? Like, um, but it wasn't artificial. It was,
No, it's a natural body.
it's a natural,
Yeah. But
yeah.
it's been reworked.
Uh-huh.
But most of the work has been done in the upper density, mostly the eighth density. The owners and the builders are from the eighth density. So in the eighth density, you're fully physical, you're there, you're interacting with it. But those lower densities, and it works this way on Earth too. It works everywhere. This is just part of the physics of the galaxy, of the universe, that we're in the same space as other things.
Yeah,
Like, heaven, we call heaven, heaven's nowhere else, heaven's right here. You just can't see it.
yeah.
Well, because it's a higher density.
Mhm.
I don't think heaven's necessarily a place to end all information, but it's part of
Yeah.
the journey. And it's the same with the space station. So if one of our ships when they do and have, fly to Mimas because we can get there in minutes. It does not take long.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the ships that we've not told anybody about. Um, when you arrive, you see a rocky moon, like what you would expect to see, like looking at our moon.
Yeah.
Uh, but our ships also have what I don't remember the name, but I call it a density engine. Now, these density engines put this electrical skin on the ship. So when they arrive at this rocky moon, they switch on the density engine and they dial in the density they want to visit.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so once they do that, then the ship is now in the vibration and frequency,
Hmm.
higher vibration and frequency. So this rocky moon turns into a metallic space station.
Totally. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then they can dock with it.
Yep. Yep.
And then you exit your ship and you can remain in that area. But usually that eighth density you can't really stay in for long because the whole station is built in the eighth density and resides there. But each little section, like each embassy, each area has its own density level so that the beings that live there can remain there.
Yeah, right. So, because it was bringing up an important point, which you've spoken to, like, okay, so you have all these different beings from perhaps potentially very different vibrational densities, right? So, and how
And
are you,
environment.
coming into communion there's got to be some frequency modulation that's pretty constant and
Yes.
consistent to, yeah, accommodate all that. So, really,
Yeah. And so you can dock with that section. And so that ship you'll usually leave and then you're there. And
hmm.
as long as you stay in that section, I mean, I remember the feeling of it. I remember the floors were not hard like a big mall. I mean,
Hmm.
everything was shiny white, kind of glossy, like some of the designs we see for sci-fi films.
Hmm.
It was very much like that, and these giant, like multi-story windows, which may have actually been projectors, but they look like windows, like you're looking out in
Hmm.
space. And trees planted, and each level is like 20 feet tall, and there's hundreds of levels.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the sections that I was in, all the third, fourth density entities, come there. There was like a big convention center there.
Hmm.
And I was there quite a bit. Sometimes I would speak, but most of the time I was just there for whatever other reason. Um, and so you remain in your environment. Now NASA has done a lot of scans of Mimas, interestingly, and they can't figure out a few things. First of all, there are these weird heat signatures, in the moon, and it also wobbles. The Mimas wobbles back and forth. And it's a mystery to them, but really what it is one of the environments that's within the space station is aquatic because there
Hmm.
are there are
Hmm.
other beings that are aquatic, that are intelligent beings that
Yeah.
can communicate. So those sections are water, and so it creates this wobble because it's not a perfect balance as it moves through space.
Yeah.
Creates a little bit of a wobble, and it's cooler or warmer in one section because the density is higher or lower.
Hmm.
So it's these weird heat signatures. Yeah.
So interesting. So, um, were you a few things there? Um, were you trained at all? Did you need to be trained in order to telepath? Was some of was there training before you got into this position? Or
Well,
was
there
it
was.
something that they built out within you as you were being age progressed? Or
Oh, that was afterward.
yeah,
There's the nature of my being, because I have the capacity.
yeah.
If I were in my original body, my original brain, I could easily do telepathic work, kinesis. I can easily do these things. I could transport myself because my bodily form is higher vibrationally.
Yeah.
Here, I'm in a lower vibrational form, though I remember the process. I remember what I have to do, but my brain isn't as good.
Right.
So out there, I had to do a lot of training
Yeah.
to be able
Yeah.
to get the
Yeah.
human brain to work.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't have the ability, when I was built out into a psychic super soldier, we're all chemically and biologically, electronically enhanced and yeah, psychically enhanced, yes. So it's a little different. Are
That's
you
forced
still
on you.
yeah, well, so are you do you have any awareness now? Like we talk about the now in our 3D reality, are these negotiations and these things still going on?
Oh, they
Um,
have to be. They have to.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Um, so this, to your knowledge, has been a static type of diplomatic infrastructure that's carried on over ages or years, or this has been going
Mhm.
on.
Yes.
So that's really, and do you have, you don't have a relay of info or a point of contact for what's happening now there, or do you have a sense of like what they're negotiating about, what they're deciding, what sort of kerfuffle they might be smoothing over in 2024, 25? Do you have?
No, not beyond what a lot of others know.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a
Yeah.
reason for that. When I left it, I was meant to leave it.
Yeah.
And so now I just rely on all of my memories, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I still get some visitations from time to time. I see orbs in the house like almost every day,
Hmm.
and there are certain beings that do come in. Was visited recently. I was doing a podcast for, I think it was the Missing Link podcast or something. I think it was them, and there was all this interference. And the internet went down, which is never done. And then I had to get on my phone, set my phone up. It went down. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And then get back on. It starts working again, and then all these orbs start flying around me on the video. And I was like, okay. So I asked guidance later what that was about because I was curious. Was that an attack? Was this something I wasn't supposed to share, or was somebody trying to stop this interview? What was that about?
Right. Yeah.
So just a little while later, I get a phone call from my niece, and she said, and she and I have many of the same guides, in
Oh,
common. And so she says, I don't know what this is about, but guidance told me to tell you that uh, there was a group of aliens that have never been to Earth before, and this was their first trip to Earth. They're here on a mission, and they wanted to enter here dimensionally or density wise, I don't know for sure, but they wanted to enter Earth in a safe place. So they said they chose your house
they're
because it's a
portaling
safe
through your
place.
home. Oh my God.
And they said they want you to know that they apologize for knocking out your internet. And I'm like, I didn't even tell her that. I
Wow.
thought that
I
was so
like that how
cool.
you pick up these little pockets of confirmation, as you move through your journey in all this. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always, I find that so affirmative when something like synchronicitous happens to me. I'm like, oh, that's connected to that and that. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, well, and cool that your niece is sort of she's on this page. Great.
She's on this page for sure. Yeah.
Very good. Um, with the negotiations, I'm wondering if was there much going on in your, were you talking at all about the slave trade, galactic slave trade?
That
Do you
was a big thing.
Was
Yeah.
that a big, because when I was in the programs, I was incarnated through my own soul agreement with the Galactic Confederation. I just call them the Light Alliance and so on and so on, to come and find out more about the galactic slave trade. And that was a lot of what I was sort of peering into from my own experience as a super soldier and so on. But I'm always curious, like, so what were you guys talking about with what was happening with the slave trade, and what were you guys, the
Well,
trafficking issues and so on.
a lot of beings, human and other, are abducted,
Mhm.
whether they're off planet or on a planet on Earth. And it's done by groups that want to colonize places and need labor,
Yeah.
or need breeding, people to breed. There's a number of reasons that they collect people, and there are some really horrifying reasons that they
Yes.
collected people. And that's the minority of it, but it still exists.
Yeah.
So it was really dependent upon again, it was often with these negative Earth humans that were out there, and they were doing abductions as well. Here on Earth, even they've come back, used to come back. I don't know if they still do.
Hmm.
They've gone to other places and taken other beings and other things,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we were always having to deal with that based on who it was doing the abducting and who was abducted.
Yeah. 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 And I would think the Earth folk, we're all going to get lumped together. Shame
Mhm.
on you. Look what you're doing to your own people.
Mhm.
Are you going to keep continuing with this? Because it's kind of just bad all around for everybody.
Well, yeah, yeah. A lot of entities, a lot of races. They may not be like super loving. They may just be tolerant of humans.
Yeah.
But generally, those if they're only tolerant, it's because they see the truth of the matter that we're kind of out there a little early in our evolution.
Yeah.
Uh,
Adolescence.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like trying to teach a toddler, not to touch the hot stove, to behave and don't cry. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. So there's a lot of them that tolerate us. They still have a love because they're in a frequency generally. But there's others that are just loving and accepting no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. I do appreciate how you spoke to the fact that, in generally speaking, it seems like everybody's like, "Hey, we're here, we're trying to get along and kind of create a something that works well for all of us." I mean,
Mhm.
that's my impression as you're speaking. Was there any, that said, was there any kind of like security or like, "Hey, we got some bouncers here in case things get rowdy," or like you didn't really need that, did you?
Well, we had it. I mean, well, for example, when I would go from place to place, I always had, two, three, four people traveling with me.
Hmm.
Because the space station, and when you're up in the eighth density, you accept everyone.
Hmm.
There's no judgment because there's really no good or bad. Good
Yeah.
and bad is what we perceive as humans as what makes us feel good or makes us feel bad that we can accept or not accept. So we see that as good and bad, and we make judgments on it. Um, there, a lot of the negative, there's not that many negative races. It's just that they make a lot of noise. And so that's what you hear about most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the ones trying to conquer humanity, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the vast minority. Now, the
Yeah.
rest of them, but they also have embassies on that space station.
Oh, so did you just read my next question? Were the Draco ever in attendance with any of these negotiations?
Well, not that I recall being in attendance in that capacity. Not that I recall, but they were there for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And there were other races of reptilian that were there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And news flash here, like not all reptilian races are negative. Um,
No.
just to say, to move beyond our polarized minds, because whenever you
Yeah.
mention Draco, it's like, okay, all reptilians.
Well,
Um,
also what people need to know is because since we as humanity and the Earth is evolving right now into a higher frequency vibrational
yes,
state density,
yes, yes,
that gives the opportunity
yes.
for negative entities to transmute to positive.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
take the opportunity in transitional times because all negativity, every negative thought entity being, however you want to look at it, ultimately must transmute back to positivity because they're part of source.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all negative things will become positive sometime in the sixth density.
Hmm. Hmm. Beautiful. This is corroborating for me because I felt like, who was I speaking to? Maybe Daryl James recently. And I said, the Draco came up and I said, I actually feel psychically that they have an opportunity to up level. They don't have
Yes.
to continue playing this role. So we have to figuratively, metaphorically, spiritually give them that space, that possibility to evolve. They've been playing a role like we've been playing a role, right?
Yeah.
They had a function, right? So maybe they are outgrowing it. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's an opportunity here. Let's seize it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for speaking to that. I appreciate that. Um, wow. Does this take us, your third tour is similar to the second. Your third 20 years are you you're still in the same capacity doing the same work. Is there any differentiation in your awareness of the two, you know?
Not really. And I will say that when it comes to memory retrieval, the further back it seems like it's opposite of what you would think. The longer ago it was, the easier I can bring it in.
Hmm.
And so it's like, because technically I'm still there. I'm still in Mimas,
Hmm. Hmm.
in another timeline.
Yeah.
And when you understand that time is a wave and, Einstein's relativity, and if you combine that with constants, then you can actually use that to ride that wave to another time.
Hmm.
And as part of the information that the United States has traded with other entities is there's a mathematical computations that need to be done to do these things. So they trade that a lot. So I don't leave Mimas until 2030.
Okay. Yeah.
But here I am.
Whoosh. Oh, my brain just blew up. I get it though. I know, and it's always so hard. Even as much as I've looked into my own experiences, it's like, was that 10 minutes? Was it 20 years? Was it 200? I don't even know. Was it 1,000? How do I conceptualize this? How do I make meaning of this in my own experience now? It's like it kind of like makes my brain all swimmy. But yes, okay, so 2030, you're coming back. So,
As a
so
2-year-old.
yeah. Yeah, so we're just gonna, I'm not even gonna dig into that. Um, so
I wouldn't. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's a tough one to
there's
grasp.
so much there. Can you want to say anything, or do you remember anything about the transport ship that took you? Was it a Navy ship that was able to kind of slingshot out to Saturn and back pretty quickly? Do you recall anything about the ship?
I do.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how long. I don't know what, again, I don't know if it was military. I know it was military. I don't know if it was Navy or Air
Okay.
Force.
Yeah.
I remember what it looks like on the inside.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember walking, along the bulkhead to a place where they were putting me in stasis.
Hmm.
I remember being placed in stasis. That was not fun.
Hmm.
Um, but there were windows I could see out into space. So I guess that was supposed to help.
Yeah. Yeah, right. After you've been put in stasis. So two things are coming up. How about this may not be the easiest topic, but I mean, unpleasant, I heard you say, about being in stasis. What do you have? Can you describe that at all for us?
I can describe being placed in stasis.
Placed in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Imagine, uh, like a cylinder, kind of not standing straight up, but leaning back at what, a few degrees. And then if they were, so there's a bulkhead with windows along the left-hand side of where I'm walking right now. I'm on a catwalk. And on the right-hand side, there are bays. So it's like the beams come up, that create the ribbing of the ship.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like gray. It looked like a battleship. I mean, it was nothing special.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then as those beams would come around, they were spaced between the beams. And between each beam, you could get like two of these cylinders, these stasis chambers. And so I walked up, and the first two or three were occupied, though I couldn't see who it was, or if I did, I don't remember. And then I get to one that the guy walking in front of me walks up to it and opens it. And it's not like, smoke and stuff. It's not like that,
Yeah.
like the movies. Um, but it was like this weird yellowy color, like a cushion on the inside. And so I walked in, I just stepped in and turned around and leaned back, with my arms down. And this is probably one of the reasons I tend to be claustrophobic.
Mm.
Um, because then there are these, like, they look just like seat belts in the automobile. And they would just he would reach in on the right hand side and pull strap over around my waist and click it in, and pull them around my knees and around my feet, clicking them all in, then around my elbows and around. I was getting really panicky. See, if right now I'm losing my breath.
Oh,
I'm remembering it. Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
then
Oh.
it comes around my shoulders and chest. And then another one, which was different. It wasn't a single strap. It was a double strap, like a loop connection. And so he brings it around, and that goes under my chin and over my forehead. And they click it in so that I'm locked down.
You're really locked in
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah. And then something else he switches on, and there's this rush of cool air. And I'm sure it's because of people that are feeling anxiety in the moment.
Mhm.
And so then they essentially just close the door. But there's a little window that I could
Mhm.
see out, and it's kind of,
Oh,
panicky.
geez. Yeah.
Um, and,
Yeah.
and so then I can see the operator, but he's busy doing something, there's a little keypadish type of thing there.
Mhm.
Then behind him was the man that was walking behind me the whole time, which I didn't mention, is my handler. Because my handler, when you're in these type of positions, you have a handler that's a representative of one of the military,
Yeah.
and they're always with you
Mhm.
every step of the way.
Mhm.
And so he steps into view so that I could see him. And then when I saw him, I calmed down a little bit, and then I just kind of went out.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the next thing I know, I'm being awoken.
Yeah, and it could be who knows how long, right? It could be a day or a year, like we don't know. So
Yeah.
that's a little different, I would say, than like I have a lot of recollection of being in a pod. A little bit different, but yeah. Did you get used to it maybe? Like, oh, I'm going to go into stasis and
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to because I was put in it all the time.
Mhm.
Um, but there was another pod that I was in. It was in a weird room. I don't know what that was about, but that was like more horizontal, and it was more metal and acrylic. You could see through it. But I don't remember much about that. I just know there were two people guarding it at the time, and I don't know why.
Mm, mm. Is it a room for healing or bringing people back, I wonder?
It might be. Yeah.
Um, okay, gosh, there's so much here. I was just I had a curious point about the ship and the technology that was bringing you out again to Saturn. Do you have a sense that that was reverse engineered tech, or was it crystal powered, or do you have any notion of anything?
That particular ship, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
recall. I
yeah,
know that it had to be some sort of magnetic engines
yeah, yeah.
because those are the engines that travel intergalactically and that travel very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like it kind of had to be that, especially if they had a density engine. That means they're traveling in other densities and they need high speed to do those type of things.
Yeah.
And that's where I can't recall the actual name of it, but it's a magnetic based
Hmm.
engine
Hmm.
that basically creates an energy that's opposing gravity,
Oh, is this like a warp drive, maybe? Or
somewhat to that effect. Yeah,
Mhm.
and when it opposes gravity, then it's like putting two north poles of a magnet together. Now they push apart.
Yeah.
You can't get them together. It does that type of thing. So it pushes against gravity, and then it creates like a vacuum suction at the front of the ship, and you just sucked through.
It's so fascinating. And also as we speak of these things, like they're so commonplace. Like we act like, wow, that's like this big light show, but actually this is a technology. It's I mean all kinds of technology. It's like so moved beyond like fossil fuels. Thank you. Yeah, I know that the tech thing is so interesting to me. And maybe, Brett, tell us a little about the DEEMS. There's so many things we could go into, but I wanted to give you a chance to speak about the DEEMS device. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um,
Um, well, I showed it
That's
to
an
you.
acronym. Show us your DEEMS, and then what is the DEEMS stands for?
I have a YouTube channel and a podcast, although the podcast is dead now, but it's called Divine Evolution. Because that was one of the ways growing up a fundamentalist Christian, I believed there was a higher power. I believed there was greater things in the world, but I also believed in science and evolution. So I'm like, well, a divine evolution. So if there is evolution, it was set into place by some intelligence. So I had a divine evolution, and then this is an electromagnetic micro singularity device.
Okay.
So it's divine evolution electromagnetic micro singularity device, DEEMS. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, basically, like I said, they had a version of this in the space program that they did transference. of memory, deletion of memory, transference of consciousness, and that's what they used it for. I use it for healing, and I actually have an agreement. When I negotiated my third 20-year term, I wanted a new body, which that was the vanity part I was talking about earlier. I
Yeah.
wanted a 25-year-old body
I want
again.
to be 25 again. Yes.
They're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I wanted to be able to release the DEEMS to the public and bring the technology in without repercussion. And I also never, had other things, shouldn't say, like a retirement plan that, of course, I didn't get. They're like, you're not going to remember anyway. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to remember it, I promise. So theirs is based in electronics and circuit boards, and it's rechargeable, and it's computer programmed. Another computer, you can program it. So it's highly non-natural. Mine, and it's used for what I said it was used
Mhm.
for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine, because this is what the Ankh used to be in Egypt. It's
Mm. Mhm.
basically the same thing. And the Ankh and this create a magnetic field and a piezoelectric field. And the piezoelectric field is the field that our pineal and our brain, pineal gland creates. And you create a pineal or you create a piezoelectric energy by putting pressure on a crystal, which there are calcite crystals in all of our pineal glands, which we
Anyway.
need.
Yeah.
We need those. And it's under hydraulic pressure from this CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid.
Hmm.
And so as you put pressure on these calcite crystals in the pineal gland, it creates piezoelectric energy, which is the energy your consciousness uses and is locked into.
Mm.
The nervous system uses, and all the electrical impulses of the brain are all created there. And it's all piezoelectric energy. So your nervous system, those little signals going through are piezoelectric. So I did research when the memories were unlocked of this. I did research on the National Institute of Health and the Library of Medicine, and I was reading it because I knew everything about it. I just needed proof that it actually worked. And the government actually is fully aware that neodymium magnets can heal the body and relieve pain in a significant way.
Mm.
In
Mm.
fact,
Mhm. Mhm.
there are at least 3 to 4 cancers, types of cancer, that if you just sit and put a neodymium magnet on your cheek, it's called interbuccal application,
Mm.
put it on your cheek for probably hours, honestly,
Uh-huh.
days possibly,
Right. Okay.
it will cure those cancers
Mm.
simply by doing that. And I'm like, why is nobody building anything that does that?
Hmm.
So I decided to build it. And so this is a series of neodymium magnets. It's 14 in total. This is a magnet. And without it, there's a series of magnets. So you create this a single magnetic field. Okay.
Mm.
You put this magnet on it. This magnet is polarized so that this pushing the field that way. So as the field comes up and wants to go around the round part,
Mm.
as it comes up and around, this is pushing it out that way. Okay.
Mm.
So that as it comes around and it's pushed out, creates a vortex of
Mm.
energy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is piezoelectric, magnetic, and ambient earth energy. And it amplifies all that energy. And then as you put it, like the little red dot is the vortex side, this is the in and this is the out. So you can just put it up against your body. I had a toothache a couple of years ago. It was severe.
Mm.
And I laid it there. First 30 minutes, it didn't help. And so I'm like, why am I building these things? I'm defrauding people. I have to stop building these things and something just leave it there a little longer. So I left it there for another 15 minutes. That pain was utterly gone, and that was severe pain,
Mm.
utterly gone.
Mm.
And it never came back. Well, it came back a couple weeks later. I was waiting to get into the dentist, and then I put it on there for 10, 15 minutes and it went away again. And
Wow.
so that it works with the nervous system specifically because it creates piezoelectric energy. Now, there's like I said, the calcite crystals, if you put pressure on a crystal, it creates piezoelectric energy. Like if you hit it with a quartz with a hammer, you'll see a spark. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The other way of making piezoelectric energy is by forcing a magnet to go against its will, really. So like pushing two north poles together or two south poles, you can't get them together, can you? Because they repel.
Mhm. Right.
But if you can get them together, it creates a spark of energy, and that's piezoelectric energy.
Hmm.
So what I do instead of all the drama, this is how this magnet wants to rest on the DEEMS device based on the field. Okay. This is how it wants to rest. I kindly ask and gently ask it, and I turn it around and I hold it in place. Now it's going against that magnetic field and creating piezoelectric energy. Very minute, but it's there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's why this energy and this device interacts so phenomenally with the nervous system.
Mm.
And it can take some pain away instantly, some severe pain. I've had people that could literally barely walk, elderly folks,
Yeah.
and they'll put it on their hips like 30 minutes on each side, get up and walk. One woman is able to go back to work. She couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Not that she was completely incapable, but the pain was too severe.
Right. Well, so there's so many applications for that then. And um, it also occurs to me that that's part, I mean, would you say this is part of your soul plan was to come in and experience all these things to at least have this, you've had several takeaways. I think this is one of them that's clearly made manifest in material world is this. So, there's perks to what we've been through, as part of the soul journey. Like, I mean, yeah. So thanks for bringing that out. It also seems like something that would be an EMF equilibrator, like it would kind of work to protect the human biology and so on in the field from all the
Yeah.
man-made EMF.
A lot of people sleep with their DEEMs.
I was gonna say, because you were talking about it, I'm like, oh, you just put it in your bed, then you have.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. Now, some people can't sleep with it right away
Mm,
because they have to come into sync. This is really kind of funny. I've had a few people approach me and say, listen, when I first bought your DEEMS, people that have never felt energy can hold this and go, oh my God, I feel tingles. That's it. You're feeling it.
yeah.
It's like I could feel it super strong for the first week or two, and then it started fading away. And now it's broken because I can't feel it anymore. I'm like, no, it's not broken.
No,
It's
no, it's just that
that
you
same
synced with
thing.
it. You're synergized with it.
You did. You came into sync with it, and that's what's happened. And now they can sleep with it, and it
Wow.
really helps. I sleep with mine, it
Mm.
helps you calm, and you can go into dreams deeper.
Ah,
People meditate with it
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the greater purpose of the DEEMS. There's no greater purpose than helping a person become relieve pain or help heal the body, regenerate tissue, and remember they can do everything themselves. So it's really about helping people remind themselves they can heal themselves.
Yeah.
It's just we can't quite do that yet, so we need a little help, and this
And we have
helps.
something physical to hold, like, oh, this thing that does the thing. It's sort of a
Yeah, and
handmaiden to the experience of like, hey, that's already in me. I can call down these energies and
exactly.
keep
This is
going.
just
So,
amplifying them to make it easier for you. It's like
yeah,
training on your bicycle.
we need that. I mean,
That's all it
that's
is.
great.
But there's a greater purpose to it as well. And I say greater, but it's in a different way.
Mm.
Um, Long story short, because I want to keep you, um, the Earth is trying to evolve into a higher vibrational frequency. And we have 8 billion people on the planet, most of whom are holding it back. The Earth's going to evolve with or without us. If it's going to evolve with us, we have to change so that we're
Yeah.
not holding Earth back. If if we don't change, the Earth will shake us off in some cataclysm, and then it'll evolve without us, and we'll have to come back at another time. Um, this amplifies Earth's energy, and it works with the electromagnetic grid of the Earth and the magnetosphere of the Earth. And so each one of these are 24/7 pumping out energy that helps the Earth evolve. So that
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully, if there's enough of these in the world, there won't have to be cataclysms.
Hmm. Hmm.
That these are meant to help evolve the planet and
Yeah.
and individuals and the race and human race.
Well, it's perfectly synced with like the function you were serving on, the moon of Saturn, right? It seems like it's a outgrowth very much of that. So yeah, and we'll link for everybody who wants to check that out. We'll link to the website for Chris and the DEEMS device and your YouTube and things so people can learn a little more about it. And any speaking engagements, anything else you want people to know about how they can be in touch with you or
Well, getting in touch, just go to deemscompany.com. On the
Mhm.
bottom of the page, there's an email link, which the email also is deemsdevice@gmail.com.
Okay.
So you can always send an email. I try to respond to every one of them between me and my sister.
Mm,
We do that. Um, but yeah, I don't, the only thing I've agreed to do so far this year is James Rink.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
Well, I think you and I both are going to be at the conference, the Super Soldier Activation Conference in October in Orlando. I think we'll both be there.
yeah,
So very
yeah.
cool.
And
Yeah.
some other offers, but I haven't agreed to do anything else yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life
Yeah.
has its rhythm and we're just not there yet.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I really want to have you back because there's my mind is nonlinear and how it kind of goes into its questioning field. And there's, I'm sure, we could talk for a long time. As always, the SSP material is so broad and deep and wide and vast. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, and for myself, if people want to book one-on-one sessions with me, there's always Starseed Coaching, Akashic Records Soul Council, Galactic Attunements, quantum healing sessions, inner child integration, and so much more. You can check that out on my website, link below. And if you want to do a group journey through a live course with me, it starts January 16th, the next one. You can check that out as well through my website. I'd love to have you guys here with me live. So Chris, again, thank you so much. And I really feel your upper vibrational, your heart stream in this. It's, really welcome that. And thank you for all you've done and we'll keep doing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for having me and truly am grateful,
Yeah.
to everyone and love it.